Hello there, my name is Richie and I'm the founder of Okia Surfing, and welcome to part 2 of Cues on why surfing is a front-footed sport. This is the second signal that you can spot how a surfer is going on their front foot instead of their back. Rail engagement also produces a lot of spray, and this is what we're going to talk about today, how the spray comes off the rail of the front end of the board, and then how the spray comes from the back end of the board when you do a back-footed turn, and then how you can create a bigger fan of spray if you have your weight forward versus your weight backwards. This is a really important class, and if you get this concept, really advanced concept, nobody else is talking about this right now. You could elevate your surf level if you understand the fundamental concept of weight distribution. Again, it's a fundamental concept because it's the backbone of the sport. It is the backbone of the sport, and anyone from beginner surfer to professional should be learning this. Like CT surfers should know this. This is important. This is amazing for the sport. So this is a really high level concept, way forward spray versus way backward spray. Again, we can measure the weight on the front foot by how the spray comes off the rail of a surfboard. Pay attention because this is really cool. And when I learned this, I was like astonished. This was one of the most amazing things I learned in my road to understand that surfing is a front-footed sport. Fundamentally, weight distribution is the backbone of the sport of surfing. That's how it is. So let me show you. So this is surfer on the right part of your screen, stomping off the tail to rotate, and then this is how the spray comes off the back part of the rail of the board. Is just a little fan of spray. It's a small gouge of spray compared to the other surfer that has a really big fan of spray. But the surfer on the left has a pattern on how the spray comes off the back. You can clearly see this surfer in here. He's like pivoting off the back foot. That's really common. 98% of the surfers in the world pivot off the back foot when they're turning, including sometimes CT surfers when they, especially when they get conscious while they're on a wave, and they're like, I want to push extra hard on this maneuver, and then they go not front-footed but back-footed in their mind. I have to push extra hard off my back foot, and then this either can cause a rail bug or they get disconnected from what they're doing. So sometimes they're better off not thinking so much when they're surfing, and then it's a really cool reason why. Now I'm going to explain to you why they're better off sometimes not thinking so much when they're surfing. Again, I explained this in my last video. There's two parts of the brain, 5% of the brain, and then this is I'm trying to do the shape of a brain. This is the 95%. This is the subconscious mind. This is the part of the brain that is in charge of automatic reactions without thinking, and then this is the conscious part, which is 5% of the brain. This is, let's put into comparison, 40 bits of processing power, or conscious mind, or wishes and desires, or dreams, what we want to do. Everything is stored there. When we're having a conversation, that is the part of the brain that's engaging right now. And then 95% has, let's say, 40 million bits of processing power. Your subconscious mind is the one that when you're walking and having a conversation, your subconscious mind is walking. When you're driving a car and having a conversation, you're having the conversation completely focused and immersed on that, but the other part of the brain is driving the car, avoiding crashing, is doing such a more complex job than just having a conversation. So that means that if a surfer on tour is surfing off their subconscious mind, front-footed basically, and then if they have a back-footed concept in their mind, when they get conscious while they're on a wave and they want to push extra hard at the end of a turn because they want to make it prettier, and that's the concept that they have in their mind, then actually they're engaging this part, of the brain in that moment when they engage into consciousness. And then, like, if you're letting this part, and then if you're thinking too much when you're surfing, that's why you lag, because this is just 40 bits of processing power versus 40 million bits of processing power. This is the part of the brain that needs to learn, basically, so like that we can go and disconnect our mind when we're surfing. So this is a concept that I'm going to talk a lot about in my lessons because this outlines why professional surfers think that surfing is a back-footed sport, but they actually surf front-footed. It's a really important concept, and if you get it, you're getting a super high level concept. Why do we repeat things in order to learn something new? Is because we want the information to go in here in the subconscious mind. Repetition is one of the languages that the subconscious mind speaks. There's other ways to learn it, but when a front-footed surfers get conscious and they have a back-footed concept in their mind and they want to push extra hard during a maneuver, they engage this part of the brain in here, which is really interesting how it happens. If you understand how the brain works, then you can learn how to surf really good. And that's also part of what we do in Okia surfing. We explain how the brain works and then we help you understand how to learn faster, which part of the brain needs to learn. Okay, so now we continue here, and then again we see all these surfers kicking off their back foot, thinking they're doing it correctly. I am 100% sure that these surfers will bow, you know, in the favor of back foot weight distribution. And that's exactly what they're doing in here, right? That is exactly what they're doing. They're kicking off their back foot, but they look so different. Now, this is something that's really cool that I want you to understand. And this is how the spray comes off the rail of a front-footed surfer. There's always two fans of spray when we surf, and then we're surfing off our front foot. There's the spray that comes from the front end of the rail, and then there's the spray that comes from the back end of the board. And then usually on really big turns, really big carves, the spray comes out in this way, and then it outlines how much pressure there's on the front foot because that big funnel spray is coming from the upper part of the board, and then this is just really coming from the fins. So it's a really interesting concept, and it's like you can see it sometimes on every single turn. And then again, this is the concept that I want you to understand, that it's another way to cue and measure this sport. We can tell how much a weight we can tell how much weight a surfer applies to his front foot by how the spray comes off the rail, basically. Now, we can see here again two fans of spray, back-footed versus front-footed spray, right? There's two gouges, two fans. So like this is something that you're gonna find is like something really common on professional surfers when they do big turns. You're gonna see those two fans of spray. So if you want to create that big fan of spray, which is only coming from the front end and then that front part of the rail, that's front-footed weight surfing, basically. You can see it in here. The rail is trying to go on the water, and then that's how, when you turn off your front foot, that part comes from forward on the rail, and it's repeatable. There's many different surfers, different turns, doing the same thing, and then you can see that back foot pressure versus front foot pressure that's coming from the front end of the board versus the back end of the board. Some people just have one of this, and especially when they're turning off their back foot. This is the thing. You cannot really know what is the right technique when you're surfing unless you watch yourself on video, basically. Because when you're on a wave surfing, everything feels amazing. Everything feels amazing. You're going to turn off your back foot and you don't know what real speed is until you try something different. It might feel amazing just turning off the back foot, but then how does it look on video compared to a front-footed surfer? Does that make sense? Right? So like that's the difference that you gotta understand. Sometimes what feels good is not the correct technique. You gotta learn something different. Take yourself out of your comfort zone, and this fundamental easy concept is what's gonna take your surfing to the next level. This is the second part of this series, something that's just gonna change surfing forever. I promise you that if you understand this concept, there's nothing that's gonna stop you to be a black belt in surfing. No matter the level you are, CT surfer, intermediate surfer, beginner surfer, this is one of the most important things that you can learn because speed is currency in the sport of surfing, and the faster you go, the better you're surfing. Surfing is completely measurable, and then speed. We have been measuring speed for so long in cars. We have been measuring speed. So in surfing, we can do the same. And then actually, the surfer that's surfing faster is surfing more powerfully, and then usually they have more flow because changing rails is also a thing of weight distribution.